This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. As always, my name is Chris Blades, and before I get started today, I want to remind you guys to, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of whenever we drop stuff. If you please as well give us a 5-star rating and write us a nice review. It'd be very helpful. And it will be very appreciated. Help us see what you guys like and what you guys don't like. And then also, if you guys are on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, doesn't matter. We're there, we can talk, we can discuss things, we can debate things, all that fun stuff. So yeah, like as I said, if you're on there, you can find us anywhere. And hopefully for there's a lot of us, but for all of the Kobe fans out there and the people whose lives were touched by either watching him play or watching him be a father, be a role model, what have you. Hopefully you guys are doing a little bit better. Like obviously, as you all know, he passed away in a tragic accident on Sunday in a helicopter. He, along with his daughter and seven other passengers. Still unfortunate. Still doesn't quite feel as if it should be true, but unfortunately it is, and many people in their very own different ways are working their way through that and dealing with it. I mean, obviously he's a person, as we talked about, he was an important figure in all sports, not just in America, not just in basketball, but across the world. Many people were touched and were affected by his play, by his life. And obviously everybody grieves things differently. So it's been interesting to see the ways in which different players, different teams, or what have you, have tried to show or tried to acknowledge his life and tried to showcase how his legacy had an impact on them. I mean, obviously you had a lot of different guys. You had a lot of guys on Sunday talking after the game about what he meant to them, all that fun stuff. You saw different people put things out on social media, whether it was Dwayne Wade, Chris Paul, Melo, LeBron. Then that's just obviously to name a few. There was many other teams put out different things. And before I get into some other stuff on that, I thought that that part of the grieving process is unfortunate for athletes due to the fact that we kind of due to the fact that they're in the public light so much. We want to know how they're affected by this, when in all honesty, that's not really any of our business. They are welcome to grieve in the way in which they so choose to grieve. So I thought it was unfortunate. I know LeBron was one, because he was one of the last people to say anything publicly that I could, like in terms of like player wise, he's one of the last people to say anything. And then even the Lakers as an organization didn't really say too much, and in my opinion they didn't really have to. Like I said, it was weird because I don't think he didn't put anything out until like sometime on Monday, I believe LeBron did. Everyone's on like social media like, oh, like why hasn't LeBron said anything, blah blah blah, why hasn't he paid his tributes? And I'm just like, I mean, the man just passed, the person he looks up to, for third all time on the scoring list. Kobe tweeted out the congratulations. which obviously was his last tweet. They talked on the phone due to based on an article that came out about that. So I imagine among many people, he was obviously taking this very hard. So it was just unfortunate for him to have to deal with that. And like I said, I don't think athletes should necessarily be required to grieve in public, which is why I was against having the games we played on Sunday. And obviously they made the decision just for the Lakers game to not have that be played on. It was supposed to be played tonight, Tuesday night. And I think, in my opinion, that was a good decision. Like, as I said, I didn't think that some of the games should have been played Sunday. I think the first game, Rockets Nuggets, was like too hard to just cancel because everyone was already there. Everyone was already ready to play. But some of the later games you could just reschedule those for a different day. But I just think it was the right decision. And this one was honestly probably an easy decision for the league, just because of the fact that both teams are from LA. So, or from LA in LA, so then it'd be easier to reschedule that game because it's not you have to get one team to like travel into LA. You just got to find a time when both of them are at home, and then you can figure out a way to be able to play that game. And also from another aspect, I mean, obviously, Kobe only played for the Lakers. The Lakers always seem to consider themselves more of a family business, which in my mind means that there's a lot of people that have been there for a long time, and anyone that comes in and out of that organization is considered family. And I would imagine to the many people involved in that organization currently, not LeBron, but maybe LeBron now is and will be one day, but Kobe was considered family. I mean, Rob Pelinka, who's the GM, I believe I read somewhere, was like the godfather to Gianna. Passed away. Obviously, he had a good relationship with Jeannie Buss and other members of the team and the organization. So obviously, I can understand why they wouldn't necessarily be prepared to go through a game, and also just because I imagine they want to make sure that they put their best foot forward on whatever tribute they're going to do for him. Because as you saw, other teams, whether it's moments of silence or in Philly, they had a big thing for him, which I'll talk about in a second. But obviously you don't want to shortchange this, and you want to put your best foot forward and give him his just due. And maybe because I think they didn't land until Monday, so going through that and then getting something ready for Tuesday may not have been enough time. And if that is the case, then I completely understand. Like I said, no one should be forced to do anything that they're not ready to do. So if the Lakers weren't ready to play a game as a franchise, then I think it was the right decision to not have them play a game. And then honestly, people aren't necessarily prepared. And then also they play again on Friday, which I imagine that game will probably go down. But we'll see. But yes, they play again on Friday. They play the Blazers, ESPN. So I imagine, like I said, it's the first game in LA since his passing, and then the first game obviously this first game for the Lakers. I don't know if the Clippers play in LA before that. Let me double check that. Yeah, the Clippers play the Kings in LA on Thursday. No, technically that'll be the first game in LA, but obviously Friday will be the first game for the Lakers. Not that it doesn't matter to the Clippers. I know a lot of players were affected by this. I know I talked about how broken up Doc Rivers was over this, so obviously, it infected them, and Jerry West involved with that organization you saw. And if you haven't, he's been on a bunch of different shows, talking, relaying stories, telling us about Kobe the player, but also Kobe the person, Kobe the father, all that stuff that was very touching here, but also very tough to hear because you could see how emotional he was. So yeah, so there's connections regardless. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see also what the Clippers do to try to remember Kobe. But yeah, like I said, the Lakers play Friday, so they give them enough time to grieve however they want to grieve, and then, like I said, to be able to prepare for whatever they're going to do, and obviously get the approval of whatever it is from Vanessa, his wife, just because I imagine anything that they put out or they decide to do, they should and probably will run by her just to make sure that it's okay and up to her standard, because obviously she wants to make sure any tribute isn't shortchanged, which is why I thought the Sixers tribute was really cool. just because of the fact that obviously this is Kobe's from the Philadelphia area, went to Lower Merion High School, so you wanted to make sure you did something special for him in his hometown, and they had a really cool tribute ceremony. They had 9 lights shown down onto the court, one for each laugh loss. They had a 33-second moment of silence for obviously that was his number at Lower Merion, 33. They rung the bell, which is their customary thing they do before every home game. They ring the bell to get everybody riled up. Obviously, this is a different scenario, but they rung it 9 times again for the lives lost. They played the video of Kobe's last introduction in Philly, which is like a really cool moment. And then also they didn't do any player intros. And then player wise, Embiid, who was a big Kobe fan, and he wore number 24 for this game. And I think Zaire Smith, who again is another player looked up to Kobe, among many players in the NBA and beyond that looked up to Kobe. He normally wears number 8, but he switched to number 7 for this game. I don't know if he'll keep that consistent. And also, the Sixers had warm-up jerseys for with Kobe Bryant on it before, as they warm up before the game. So that was really cool to see. Obviously, other teams around the league have done like the moment of silences or the 24-second violation followed by the 8-second violation, or vice versa. But the Sixers thing was really touching. So obviously, like I said, they clearly put time and effort into it, and I imagine the Lakers are going to try to do the same. So that was fun to see. And also, with Embiid, he had 24 points, obviously, and for his 24th, he had like a fadeaway reminiscent of Kobe. It's not exactly the same, but it was like, that was cool. He got it on 24 points, and I know he was, kind of extending off of that. I know, and yesterday with the Kings, Monday, with the Kings, Buddy Hield, he was able to score 42 points on 24 shots at 5 rebounds, 3 assists, I believe, or vice versa. Let me double check that for you guys. But regardless, the rest of his stats added up to 8, which is really cool because again, he was a guy that was a big Kobe fan, just because, I mean, much like Embiid, outside of the country, there's only so many different teams that are available on like regular television. And I know Buddy Hield said that the Lakers are one of the few teams that he could ever watch play, so, and obviously that's how he fell in love with Kobe. And I know I have a friend because Buddy's from the Bahamas and he's from the Cayman Islands, so both in the Caribbean. And it was the same thing. He was a big Lakers fan just because that was like the team that they showed a lot in the Bahamas. I mean, no, just not in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean. Excuse me. That's the team that they got shown a lot. I know when I went down to the Bahamas for just for vacation one time, my family, we were watching the game and our waiter was like the hugest Kobe fan ever. It's just like a thing that's just like the people outside of the country. That's just like the Lakers are the team, generally speaking. Just again, it's the most successful team NBA wise, one of the most well known teams outside of the country. So a lot of players gravitated to them, and then thus they gravitated towards Kobe. But on Buddy Hield, like I said, he had 42 points on 24 shots, which was cool. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, again, which adds up to 8. He wears number 24, again, for Kobe. And then I know he talked about after the game just how much it meant. And then also, obviously, he helped them come back from a big deficit. They were down, I think, over 20 at some point in the game. They overcame like a 17-point deficit and like a 15-point deficit in like the last like 2 minutes and change of the game. Yeah, they were down 17 with 2:49 left in the game and ended up winning in overtime. And a lot of that was because of the play of Buddy Hield, especially in that fourth quarter, which is again something Kobe was known for. And then obviously they were able to get the win in overtime. So that was a cool moment for them. And we've had a lot of those different cool moments, guys going out and having big games or getting specific numbers, stats wise, based on Kobe. I believe I think it was. I know on Sunday, I don't think I touched on this too much, but Trae Young had, I think, 45. Yeah, he had 45 and 14 on 24 shots. Again, and then I know he started the game wearing the number 8. I don't know if he was able to wear it the whole game, but he's able to do that. And then also Devin Booker, another guy who was a big Kobe guy. He had 36 on 24 shots. So both of them just kind of trying to pay tribute in ways that they could. So that was really cool. And then it's just been really interesting to see different ways in which players and teams and such around the league have tried to pay their tributes and remember Kobe in whatever way they seemed fit. So that's interesting. I mean, obviously it's not going to stop this today. It's not going to stop this week. It's probably not going to stop even this season, really. I mean, Kobe's was ingrained in the NBA and the game of basketball. And also, like I said, just sports as a whole. So I don't think anyone will ever fully get over it. But like I said, it was nice to see the different ways in which teams try to pay their respects on the court. So that was cool. So speaking of that, after this break, I'm going to talk about some of the ways I think the league could try to honor Kobe in different ways. There's a couple of different things that have been talked about on social media, a couple of different things that I may have thought of that I think would be pretty cool as ways to, again, like I said, pay tribute to him and honor him in a way that, I mean, it's impossible to honor him exactly in a way that symbolizes what he meant to the game, but just to try your best. So these are just some of my suggestions. Obviously, we'll see what the NBA does, but regardless, we will talk about that right after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, just not even from a league standpoint, another thing I wanted to touch on from the players and the players' standpoint is that one other thing that I thought was pretty cool was that players now are, I know that there hasn't been too many players that have publicly, or that has been reported publicly that have done this, but a few players talked about changing their numbers from whether it's 8 or 24 just to because obviously they wear it. Some of them do because of, although I guess most of them do, just because of what Kobe meant to them as a figure to look up to. You know, obviously they don't. Those are his numbers, or those were his numbers when he played. Obviously, he doesn't own the numbers, but in a sense, he kind of does. So they're changing their numbers. I know Spencer Dinwiddie was a player. I believe he said he's going to 26. He was 8 previously, and I mean the significance behind that is up for him to tell us if he chooses to. Again, it's not our business. He can have changed the number for whatever reason. But I know some people said it was because 2 plus 6 equals 8. Some people said it could have been 24 and 2 for Gianna's number because when she played, she was number 2. So regardless of what it adds up to or what the exact significance is, it was cool to see that he decided to make that change. I think Terrence Ross was another guy. He's going from, I believe he's 8 now. He's going back to the 31, which he used to wear when he was with the Raptors. He's on the Magic now, I believe. I'm trying to remember. Terrence Ross has been on. Yeah, he's on the Magic. I just want to double check and make sure. So yeah, he changed his number to 31 again because to honor Kobe. I know a couple other guys they were talking about are internally trying to make decisions on if they should change their number. And like I talked about before, Embiid said he was already. He said he was already, but he changed his number for this past game. Obviously, I don't know if that's not going to hold, but who else? I think another one I saw was like Jahlil Okafor. I believe he wears 8, and he was talking about changing. He hadn't decided yet. Obviously, Zaire Smith, I mentioned in the last segment, he wore number 7. I don't know if that's fine. I think he said he wanted to wear number 5, but they didn't have number 5 ready. And the cool thing, he touched on Embiid, and the cool thing about 24 was the fact that it was already retired by the Sixers, not for Kobe, but for Bobby Jones, I believe, who was obviously a member of the team a while ago, and they were able to get his permission in order for Embiid to wear it during the game. So I thought that was a cool gesture by both Embiid and by Bobby Jones to be like, hey, yeah, you guys can retire it so that Embiid could wear it in memory of Kobe. So I thought that was a cool aspect of the story. But yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if any other players. I believe Zach LaVine wears 8 for the Bulls. I think he was a big Kobe guy. So yeah, it would just be interesting to see if other players decide to change it without obviously being forced to do so. I don't think the league's that necessarily going to be like, hey, change it now. Because again, it's late. It's too late. It's late in the season. Most players, you have to decide to do that before the season starts. I mean, it was a big deal when I think LeBron was going to change his number when he first came to the Lakers away from 23. But then they were like, hey, we already printed up all these 23 jerseys. Like, yeah, no, you can't. Please don't do that. And he decided to keep it. But I thought that was that part was pretty funny. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And like I said, I don't think they'll do anything this year. But I think in the future they could potentially just retire it across the league, or at least retire one. Say retire the 24. That's what he ended his career as, was 24. Maybe just retire the 24. I know. They didn't do that with the Jordan 23, other than I know. I mean, also, I'm kind of all over the place, but I know, just going back to 24 real quick, I know the Mavs, Mark Cuban, I don't remember if I mentioned this on the last episode, but I know Mark Cuban said no one on the Mavs is going to wear 24 again. And obviously I know like the Sixers, who are his hometown team, they already retired 24 for somebody else, but they still already retired, so they don't have to worry about that. Like I said, going back to the Heat, they retired Jordan's 23 when he left. I believe, in my opinion, 23 is probably going to be retired once LeBron retires, because, again, it's hard to live up to that standard with that number. Or, I mean, may not necessarily be retired, but just players who may not wear it just because of that. But, yeah, it would be interesting to see if the league, obviously this is more of a next year thing, but if the league decides to just, retire one or both of the numbers. Because obviously, no, they already retired both numbers for the Lakers, which I'm happy about. That would have been very unfortunate if they weren't able to have that ceremony before he passed. But they were able to do that, which was a cool moment for him, cool moment for his family, cool moment for the fans, everybody. So at least we know the Lakers, they're already done. No one's ever going to wear those again. But yeah, I mean, I've always been a guy that's not really a big number retirer, just because I thought it'd be like a cool thing to have a player like I know, like sometimes in college, I think LSU does this. You like the number 7 when you have a really good defensive player. You just give them the number 7 to kind of just to pass on that torch. That's always kind of the way I viewed numbers. That's why I thought I wasn't a big on retiring, but in certain circumstances, I understand why, and I believe if the league were to do this, which I don't think they probably will, though. Like I said, the players are kind of already informally doing it themselves. Just like I said, just saying they're not going to wear 8 or 24. Or some of them, obviously, not all of them, but some of them. And I don't think, obviously, the league's going to, if the players want to do that, if they have a certain window they have, they're not going to turn it down if the players want to do that. But it'll be interesting to see if the league decides to do that as a whole, or if maybe even just the teams decide to be like, hey, yeah, no one's wearing 24, no one's wearing 8. And though it may not be officially retired by the league, it's like unofficially retired, just no one wears it. I think that's the thing I don't understand. No, I was talking to my mother about this. This is a very drastic and a very drastic circumstance, just because it happened so quickly. It was very unexpected. So just like, what do you do when like all athletes end up passing? Because obviously the only thing about life that is certain is that. So it's like, what do you do when Jordan or Magic or like Larry Bird? Just one of those things. Like, what do you do when all those guys pass? And this is a very fair question. And I don't announce you can't retire every number ever, but just under certain circumstances, I believe that there is exceptions that can be made. And I think the unexpectedness and the tragedy of this specific passing may require an exception to be able to be like, hey, yeah, no, we can let that go. Just because, like I said, a lot of players currently in the league, and just worldwide, were affected by Kobe and his style of play, and just like looked up to him in a way that I would completely understand if they just were like, hey, we just don't want anybody to wear those numbers again. Another thing I think they could do is, I know this was talked about a little bit in previous years, but I know it's another thing I saw with me is potentially changing the logo. I mean, obviously it's been Jerry West for forever, it seems like. I know Jerry West has come out, or he's done interviews or talked about in the past, and said he never really wanted to be a logo, just kind of happened that way, and obviously they're not gonna change it now. And this is another thing where they can't really change it this season due to the fact that, again, they already have all these jerseys made with the logos. I'd imagine it'd be a complete mess to have to make new jerseys with the new logo on it. So this is all for future stuff. But it'd be interesting to see if they decide to do that. I know Jerry West, he's talked about Kobe a lot, how much he loved Kobe and what Kobe meant to him, and just, I don't think it would be a problem with him necessarily if he passed the torch on to Kobe in that way. And also, I kind of just think the logo, just because it's like, one, the NBA is the only sport that really has like a specific player involved in that logo. So because of that, I feel like it could, because I mean, really, most people, like most younger people, don't even know who Jerry West was as a player. Obviously, I'm 24 and I know he's the logo, but I don't know who he was as a player. I know him more as an executive, helping build different dynasties around the West Coast. So just like the player that the logo is could be anybody. So, in my opinion, I don't think it's that big of a deal if you want to change it every. I mean, obviously it's hard because of the production of jerseys and stuff. You got to remake all these jerseys, but so that'd probably be the only reason why they wouldn't do it. But I think it would still. I don't think Jerry West would have an issue with it. And I think it'd just be a cool way to pay tribute to him. In that way, but again, like it kind of with the retired number thing, it's just like, all right, well, then what happens when Jordan, or what happens if Magic or somebody like that? And obviously, you can't do it for everybody, but those are two high level things that I think would be cool. I don't think those are probably going to happen just because of the nature of. About two things I think they could do, or one thing I think they definitely could do, is just rename the All-Star MVP trophy, because it's not named for anybody. I know that they have like the Larry O'Brien trophy for the championship, or the Bill Russell Finals MVP trophy, stuff like that. They don't have that name for the All-Star MVP, and Kobe is tied with Bob Pettit for the most MVP All-Star Game MVP awards won at 4. So at the very least, I think that's one thing you can do, because like I said, a lot of sports put names on different trophies to celebrate different awards, and I think that would be a good one. Just be like, hey, this is the Kobe Bryant All-Star Game MVP trophy. And that's a simple thing. That doesn't involve remaking a bunch of apparel. It doesn't involve massive wholesale changes. Just a quick add-on to the trophy. I think that's probably the easiest thing. Well, probably the second easiest thing, but one of the easier things they could do. Just to, like I said, rename the All-Star Game MVP trophy after him, since it's not named for anybody currently. Just like put his name on there, have that always be for him, and then that way you won't have to worry about trying to figure out something else to do. And if they didn't want to do that, they could make up an award for him. I mean, obviously I know the NFL has like the Walter Payton like Man of the Year award. They could figure out some award to add in. It's like one person a year, and just have Kobe's name on it. Could be different things. Maybe like the ESPYs could do an award. I forget if they have an award for like a coach or a mentor in the community, something like that. The ESPYs does. I feel like they probably already do, but like I said, I don't remember exactly. This is a slightly variation from the NBA, but that's another thing. Just like the world of sports could do, is just give him an award. Whether the NBA wanted to add an award, or the ESPYs or somebody wanted to add an award, and then obviously I think they could make like an emblem or like a black band or something. I think the Lakers are probably definitely going to do this, and if teams around the league want to, they probably could. But I know the Lakers are probably going to add something onto their jerseys so that Kobe can always be remembered in that way. And what that is, I don't exactly know. Like I said, like a stripe or something. I know like a lot of, like in the NFL, they do like stickers for like people that pass for a different franchise, or even just for the league as a whole. If it's a big name person, they'll like put a sticker on there to kind of commemorate him. So I imagine the Lakers could do something like that, add like a sticker or like a patch or something onto their jerseys in remembrance of Kobe. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the league as a whole does. Obviously, like I said, no rush to do anything. You want to take your time, make sure you do whatever you can to the best of your ability. So, like I said, no need to rush into making a decision about what to do to honor Kobe. But I think there are more than enough ways in which you can honor Kobe around the league that I think the NBA as a whole should look into, and I think it'd be pretty cool to see. But yeah, so we'll see what the Lakers do. We'll see what they do Friday in terms of how they pay tribute. See what if and when anything comes about what the league itself wants to do. But these are just some of the ideas I could have. Like I said, change the logo, retiring all the numbers is probably not going to happen, though it would be cool, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I do think, at the very least, changing the All-Star Game MVP trophy to have his name on it is, at the very least, what they could do, in my opinion. That seems like a very simple and easy thing to do. It's like, hey, he's already tied for the record for most All-Star Game MVPs won. It's a very, like, that's how they do most awards. It's like either like the first person or like the person that won it the most or something like that. That's how they name a lot of awards across all sports. So I just figured that'd be an easy one to add in. But yeah, so after this next break, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I mean, it's kind of been overshadowed due to this news and due to Kobe's passing. But the Super Bowl is still this week. It is Sunday. We are on Tuesday night now, so by the time you hear this, teams will be back practicing this week. Obviously, there was the opening night last night, which was decently interesting. But yes, so the Super Bowl's this week, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the way in which both teams got here. Not only this year, but just over the past couple of years, how both the Chiefs and the 49ers got to this point to be able to play for the Super Bowl. So we will discuss that, and I'll talk about that right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. And before I get to the NFL real quick, I just wanted to also point out I very much appreciate and I was very happy that, I don't know if it was the Lee's decision or ESPN decision, but them replaying Kobe's final game where he scored 60 points was I'm very cool. I know I talked about it on the last episode. That was one of my favorite Kobe memories, and it was cool to be able to watch it again on Monday night, obviously under much different circumstances. But it was just, like I said, it was cool to see again. Just to see, like, it's something that we may never see again in terms of a performance by a player of that caliber in his last game. And also on TNT before the games, they had the hour-long sit-down. They had a bunch of the normal TNT guys, and like D. Wade and Jerry West and Rick Foss and some other teammates come and talk about Kobe's life and legacy, and that was really cool to watch. Too, I imagine if you didn't see that, there's clips online that you can see and watch. But yeah, those are just two other things that the league had already done to remember Kobe's life and legacy. Now, those were two things I thought were really cool. So give the league, give whoever decision makers were on those things kudos for that. Like I said, Super Bowl this week. Gotta talk about it. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the Niners, just because, in my opinion, their path to this game is not the conventional path that most teams have taken recently. In my opinion, or just at least in the way the league has gone the last few years, there have been a couple ways to get to Super Bowl. Easiest one, be the Patriots. If you have Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback and greatest coach of all time, makes getting to Super Bowl almost a breeze. Obviously, it didn't work out for them this year, but I mean, they had been to the last 3 Super Bowls before this year. They've been to what? I'm trying to think. So they went to the Seahawks won, so the last 3, Seahawks won, and the Giants won. So they'd been like half the Super Bowls in the last decade. I mean, that's a pretty impressive run. So yeah, that was the easiest way. Just be the Patriots. You get Super Bowl on average every other year. And sometimes back-to-back years, which is, I mean, pretty cool. Another way that a lot of teams have done recently would just ride the young quarterback train. I mean, just the way with the salary cap and all the different stuff is set up. If you can find a quarterback who's on his rookie deal, which is obviously much cheaper than you're paying most of the franchise quarterbacks, you can be able to build a team around the young quarterback and get to Super Bowl. I know the Seahawks did it with when they had the Legion of Boom around Russell Wilson. Even going back further than that, the Steelers did it a while ago when Big Ben went to his first Super Bowl. He was, in his second year in the league, I believe it was, when he won that Super Bowl over the Seahawks. I mean, obviously he didn't really do that much, but he was a quarterback of the team that got there, and he was good in the playoffs. He was good in the playoffs the year before that, too, as a rookie. If I remember correctly, obviously. That was a long time ago. I was a young lad at the time, so if I made a mistake on that, please excuse me, but I believe it was second year in the league. And then in recent years, you've had the Eagles, though, obviously they had it with Nick Foles, not Carson Wentz, but he led them to 11-2 record before he got hurt, was MVP of the year, MVP of the league, so that helps. Rams did it with Jared Goff, where they had a young quarterback on a rookie deal, were able to get in, add in some pieces, whether via trade like Brandon Cooks or guys they had already had, and Aaron Donald, or even adding guys like Talib or like Marcus Peters or whoever. You're just able to bring in pieces because you're, like I said, you're not paying that much money for a quarterback. You can afford it. And then obviously this year with Mahomes and the Chiefs, they almost could have done it last year, but then unfortunately D Ford, who's in the Super Bowl this year, which is on the other side, which is actually a pretty cool dynamic for that. Just because D Ford is playing the team that replaced him, and then Frank Clark is one of the better players on that defense, and that's the guy they replaced him with. So that's a fun dynamic or fun storyline for this game. But yeah, so those are the two ways. The other way is really just ride average to an above average quarterback to a hot streak. Whether it's, like I said, Joe Flacco when he did it. Eli the second time, or the first time, but definitely the second time. Depends on how you feel about Cap, but obviously he played really well going into that Super Bowl and was able to get them there and almost brought them back against Joe Flacco, and then he was good the next year. I believe that's the year they lost to the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. So yeah, those are really the three main ways. Only the way a team's really gotten to Super Bowl this decade is either have the MVP, which you could say would have worked for Mahomes last year, kind of sort of worked for the Eagles and Carson Wentz, and then worked for Cam and Panthers. I can't believe I forgot, but the Panthers. And the only other team that really make the Super Bowl. Oh, I mean, Matt Ryan, his MVP season, he made the Super Bowl. Didn't win, but he made it. So, yeah, it was just like, those are really the four main ways to get there. Either be the Patriots, have a great rookie quarterback, have an average quarterback just get hot in the playoffs, or have an MVP caliber quarterback season. And that's really been it. And the Niners have none of those things, which makes their run even more impressive. I mean, they're a team that's led by their run game and their defense. They have a quarterback who got paid before he had really shown anything. I believe they traded for him when he started, the last 5 games that season. And then obviously he tore his ACL last year. So he hadn't really shown much before that, and he was still paid. And he hasn't really had to do anything. It's not like, oh, he played really well in the playoffs. Like, no, he's thrown the ball 20-ish times. 19 and 8, I believe the numbers are. So, less than 30 times in 2 playoff games combined. Both games they've won easily. So, I mean, just the way that they got there is very interesting. And they were also a team before the season. No one really thought they were going to be that good. I mean, they just had the number 2 pick last year. Like I said, Jimmy G was coming off the knee injury. It was year 3 of Shanahan and John Lynch. People were like, oh, is this really going to work? Like I said, they had been bad the last couple of years. There's some of the decisions they had made hadn't really worked out. They had trouble drafting guys in terms of, there's some of their picks hadn't really hit. If you look back at not this past year, because we'll touch on that in a second, but if you look at last year, Mike McGlinchey, who they picked in the first round, he's been good. Started for them as a tackle. Dante Pettis, they kind of phased him out of the lineup. Fred Warner, the linebacker, he's been really good for them. Some other guys who contributed here and there. In 2017, they had Solomon Thomas, who doesn't even start on that D-line anymore. 2 years removed from being a number 3 pick. They have Reuben Foster, who they drafted at the end of the first round. He's not even on the team anymore. Had issues with that. Witherspoon, the corner, who starts, but kind of also doesn't start because he's been taken out a couple different times because he's just been getting roasted on that side of the field opposite Richard Sherman. They've had to bring in a guy, I believe his name's Mosley, 41. They've substituted him in for certain times when Witherspoon struggled. They obviously hit on George Kittle, which is big. DeForest Buckner in 2016, he was a good pick. And then obviously going back to 2015, Eric Armstead, who hadn't even had, I believe, more than 3 sacks heading into this season in his career in year 5. Yeah, the most he had in his career before this year was 3. And obviously he had 10 in the regular season this year. So yeah, which is coming to this year, they were their path to getting here was not one that most people had followed. They had struggled, whether it was with draft picks, struggled with their quarterback staying healthy, struggled with finding the right pieces all on both sides of the ball to try to get it together. And then, honestly, the Jimmy G injury might have been a blessing in disguise for them. And it was a blessing in disguise, honestly, because because of that, they had a bad season. I think they finished 4-12. If he plays, and I mean, during that time, they got pretty decent play from Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard last season with Kyle Shanahan. So, and obviously, based on what we've seen this year, it's hard for us to believe. Obviously, the defense wouldn't have been this good last year. But you all right. So say they go 7-9, 8-8, 9-7. Cool. So they're a decent team. They end up picking in middle rounds. That means no Nick Bosa, who's been arguably their best player on defense all year. That means probably no Deebo Samuel, who's been great for them over the second half of the season as a rookie. That means depending on where they pick, maybe no Dre Greenlaw. I mean, he got picked in the 5th round, so maybe you can still have him. But then obviously maybe their pick would be in a different slot, and they might have missed out on him. And he's a guy that's had to start a good amount of games for them this year because of Quan Alexander getting hurt. So there's been a lot of guys that contributed to the team this year that may not have been on the team if they were better last year. And then obviously, the important part of that is hitting on those picks, though Nick Bosa was kind of hard to miss on. But hitting on Deebo Samuel, hitting on other guys, which they had struggled with the past couple of years and the past couple of drafts in doing so. And then even being able to, I think they traded a pick. Yeah, they traded a pick for D Ford, who who maybe, again, if they have a better season, maybe they don't trade for D Ford. And he's obviously been very helpful for them this year. I'm trying to think. But yeah, no, so there's a certain domino effect that happened due to the fact that Jimmy G injury. So it'd be interesting to see how that would have gone. And then obviously also the Emmanuel Sanders trade. If they maybe they might make that trade in the offseason as opposed to be in the middle of the season. Maybe they don't make that trade at all because maybe they're getting better play. And obviously he's been great for them. Hasn't really done much in the playoffs, mainly because Jimmy G hasn't done much. But he's been great for them all year since they traded for him. He's been a big boost to that passing offense. Has helped open up things for everybody else. And that might not have happened if not for last season going as badly as it was, just because maybe it kind of lit a fire under Shanahan or John Lynch or whoever, just be like, hey, we need to get this thing right. Because as you see, not everybody gets 3 years. I mean, obviously they were brought in together, so hard to separate them. But we've seen whether it's Pat Sherman, who got fired after 2 years, Freddie Kitchens, who got fired after 1 year. Like, a lot of this is the Browns, but other teams don't necessarily keep coaches around that have, they don't normally keep coaches around that aren't successful. And obviously the Niners coming into before Shanahan got there weren't that good, and then obviously they had top 10 picks in back-to-back years. This is probably a put up or shut up kind of year for them, just to see like, hey, if this year doesn't go well, they both may be out of jobs. So it's interesting to see how just one little thing and one decision, obviously in picking Nick Bosa and not trading back or something, kind of helped change maybe the course of this franchise. Obviously a very storied franchise, but they may not be where they are today. It may not be where they're headed in the future if not for Jimmy G getting hurt and thus them being able to pick Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel and a couple other guys. Like I said, one guy on the defensive line can change an entire defensive line. And having those good guys on the outside like Nick Bosa and D Ford has helped. I mean, DeForest Buckner was good last year, so he didn't need a lot of help, but it's helped guys like Eric Armstead be better than they had been up until this point. So yeah, it's just interesting to see just how exactly they got to this point, just because, like I said, no one really thought they were going to be this good. People thought they could be better. People had a lot of faith in Shanahan as a coach, and Jimmy G as a quarterback, even though he hadn't really shown that much up until this point. But no one was sure. And now we're pretty sure that they're at least going to be a team that should be formidable. Obviously, you never know, because, again, a lot of teams are one-year wonders. A lot of teams get to the Super Bowl and then lose, or even win and then don't get back the next year or for years to come, just because football is so unpredictable. But just the way that the 49ers were able to change their fortunes basically over the course of an off season is very impressive. So I commend them for that. And so after this break, we're going to switch over to the other side of things and talk about how the Chiefs got here. Because, I mean, their path was more conventional, but still, they had some bumps, had some decisions to make, had some things they had to do in order to get to this point. They were obviously able to get here. So we'll talk about how they got here right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Podcast Network. So, as I talked about, as I said before the break, the Chiefs' path was a little bit more conventional. They used one of the 3 to 4 main ways that teams get to Super Bowl nowadays is have an amazing young quarterback. And they were in a situation where they may not have, where they had to make that decision to decide to get him because they didn't necessarily need to. I mean, they hadn't obviously gotten this far with Alex Smith. But the year before he was drafted, I believe they were still in the playoffs. So it's not like they were a bad team. Alex Smith had been doing well under Andy Reid. So again, it's not like this was a necessary thing for them to do. Yeah, I think so. What? Excuse me. I hit something. Yeah, so they drafted him. His rookie year was 2017. So 2016, they went 12-4. Lost in the divisional round. I think that was that the game they lost to the Steelers. Interesting. I don't remember this. Yeah, I really don't remember this. Okay. But yeah, they lost the Steelers in the 2016 season to obviously have a chance to get to the AFC Championship game, which they hadn't done in a while. And after that season, they could have just decided to stick with Alex Smith, just ride it out. Again, they had gone 12-4 through the course of the regular season. Alex Smith, I'm trying to look up his numbers that year. Alex Smith was pretty good that year. No, actually, no, his numbers were kind of average. Never mind. I see why they decided to do it. He only threw 15 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. They threw for 3,500 yards. You didn't really ask him to do that much. He obviously didn't even throw over 500 times. But up until that point, he'd only had, 2 seasons with over 20 touchdown passes, and both of them came in Kansas City. So again, Andy Reid was working his magic, but it was like they had a decision. It's like they were at kind of a crossroads. It was like, all right, do we think is there any way we can possibly get further than this, or are we just going to be stuck here? And they decided, like, all right, let's try to see if we can get further. So then they trade up, draft Mahomes. I mean, and even from there, they had a big decision to make just because the year Mahomes' rookie year, 2017, Alex Smith goes 9-6 as a starter, throws 26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The offense is great. The team is good. But then I think, they lose in the wild card round? Yeah, I think this is the wild card round. Lost to Mariota, which was rough because they had they were up 18-0 at a certain point. Oh, no. They were up. They were up by 18. Excuse me. They weren't up 18-0. They were up by 18 at halftime of that game, and obviously they let the Titans score 19 unanswered to win the game in the second half. So that was a big collapse for them. And obviously that was Alex Smith's last game as a Chief. But yeah, so then it was like after that point, they're like, all right, we've seen enough from this Mahomes guy in practice, on scout team, and we probably think, all right, this is as far as Alex Smith can go. Like maybe if Alex Smith gets them to the AFC Championship game, potentially a Super Bowl, which they have the capability to do, maybe these things go differently. But again, they trade up to draft Mahomes for a reason. They weren't just going to have him sit on the bench for 3 or 4 years, in my personal opinion. So then they move on from Alex Smith, and then obviously we see what Mahomes done, lit the league on fire. I think that makes sense. Taking the league by storm, whatever cliche you want to use to describe how he's played. Yeah, he's been great. Obviously threw 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards last year. And then last year was another crossroads for them just because they were in a situation where it was like, all right, we got the AFC Championship game, but how do we get over that? Like, what do we need to do in order to get over that hump? I think 2017, that first season, that's when they traded. I know they brought in Sammy Watkins before Mahomes' year. I think if they didn't trade Marcus Peters before the season, they traded him during that season, just because I think they were kind of over him at that point, which is kind of crazy to think about. They traded him in that offseason. That's what it was. They're heading into Mahomes' first year as a starter, which is another big decision they had to make, because obviously he helped get the Rams to the Super Bowl that year, and then he also was an important part of Baltimore this past season. So he's been pretty decent wherever he went. But again, that was a difficult decision that they had to make. So after not winning the AFC Championship game, which they very easily could have won, again, like I said, they were at a crossroads, and they decided to fire their defensive coordinator, bring in Steve Spagnuolo, who had been with Andy Reid in the past. So you kind of knew him. They decided to trade, quote-unquote, their best pass rusher in D Ford to the Niners. They decided to let Justin Houston walk and bring in pieces. Obviously, they brought in Frank Clark. They brought in Tyrann Mathieu. Brought in Rashad Breeland. I know they signed the corner, Charvarius Ward off the Dallas practice squad, or they just claimed him. I'll look that up for you guys. But regardless, they made key additions to their defense to help improve that. Now, obviously, it took a little time this year to get it all together, but since about like week 10, that defense has been really good, and that's kind of the one thing they were missing, and that's probably been the most important part of how the Chiefs got here was the fact that we already knew what their offense was, and I'll talk about that in a second, but knew their offense was going to be good, obviously with Mahomes last year and then continuing this year. We knew they were going to be good. It was just like, could that defense hold up and be up to a Super Bowl caliber in the playoffs? Because obviously you're not going to win every game in the playoffs having to score 40 points. Though, I mean, could the Chiefs do it? Probably, but that's not typical. That's not how most teams win in the playoffs. You need to play some level of defense, and the Chiefs have been able to do that in the playoffs this year. And that's something that last year they struggled with. They weren't able to do. Especially at the end of that Patriots game. They just like whenever they needed a stop, they just couldn't get it. Obviously, they didn't bring back Eric Berry, who sat out this year, though I believe I saw a report he wants to come back. But yeah, it was another decision they made. Ended up drafting Juan Thornhill, who unfortunately is hurt now, but he was a guy that was going to help them replace Eric Berry in that position. So that's another decision they had to make with that defense last offseason. So yeah, I mean both the Niners and the Chiefs had to make big decisions last offseason. But continuing on the Chiefs, yeah, that was a big decision that they had to make and do, and obviously it's paid dividends for them. The defense is much improved, and like I said, on the opposite side of the ball, they added in even more speed. They already had Tyreek Hill, one of the best players in the league. Brought in Sammy Watkins last year, ran like a 4.4 at the combine. They added in Mecole Hardman, who's even added more speed to that team, though that was kind of insurance in case something happened to Tyreek Hill, because they thought he could have been suspended or whatever. He ended up missing some games anyway, not due to suspension, but having Hardman on the team has added an even extra dynamic. They basically just decided, hey, and as Robert Saleh said this about the Chiefs offense, like, hey, what if we just decide to take a track team and just put them on a football field and just have them run past everybody all the time? And Andy Reid was like, you know what, that's a great idea. And Mahomes was like, you know what, that's a great idea. I can throw it 90 yards if I wanted to. Let's just have people run deep, and I'll just chuck it down the field, and they'll be open, and I'll get it to them. And now you see what happened. Chiefs are arguably the best offense in the league. So yeah, that was the thing. And then also, probably most importantly, is the fact that they built on their success. Because a lot of teams you see get to that hump and then regress or take a step back. Like whether it's hey, maybe you missed the playoffs, or hey, you lose in the division round, which again, it looked like they were going to do to the Texans. That would have been interesting. The Texans-Titans AFC Championship game. Big yikes. Also, side note, shout out to Bill O'Brien. He named himself GM. That was pretty cool. If you didn't see, Bill O'Brien was the de facto GM, but now he officially has the title of GM because they fired their GM and then they never really hired one just to let Bill O'Brien run their front office, and now he traded away all their picks, and who knows where they'll be able to go. But shout out to him. But yeah, so they were able to build on their success because, like I said, we've seen teams recently, whether they get to the Super Bowl, get to the championship games, what have you, and then they struggle to get back there the next year, unless you're the Patriots. Look at the thing about the Saints. You thought they were trending in the right direction. They could have beaten the Vikings. Honestly, might have beaten the Eagles had they beat the Vikings, but then that didn't happen. Get to the NFC Championship game. You all know the controversy involving that game. Don't get to Super Bowl. And then this year, they lose in the first round. The Rams get to the Super Bowl, missed the playoffs. The Eagles have been back to the playoffs, but haven't got past the divisional round since they won the Super Bowl. Falcons haven't been to an NFC Championship game, since they won the Super Bowl. So the Broncos and the Panthers have struggled since then. Even going back to like the Niners from years ago with Cap, we thought they were going to be on a nice run. They had a newer head coach in Harbaugh. Had Cap. He was looking like he was going to do his thing. That didn't really turn out the way many people thought it could have. So yeah, just like nothing's really promised in the league, as I've talked about before. It's very unpredictable. Year to year, you don't really know what's going to happen, and the Chiefs were able to build on that success that they had last year. Like I said, they were a play away from being in the Super Bowl if D Ford just lines up on sides. They were in the Super Bowl last year and potentially could have won. Who knows what they would have been able to do to the Rams for the second time around, having already played them in the regular season. And I know for a fact they would have scored more than 13 points. The Super Bowl was awful last year. And I think this won't be much better, but that's neither here nor is it there. But yeah, no, it's just like the Chiefs didn't allow last year to linger in their minds. They were like, hey, we were almost there, and now we're going to get there. And then now, obviously, they want to try to win. But yeah, so then both these teams took very interesting paths, and both these teams used the off-season to their advantage. And I think that's one of the bigger takeaways, in my opinion, about how teams have success year to year is just like the success is built in that off-season, whether it's personnel moves, whether it's coaching moves, whether it's trades, drafts, free agency, what have you. A lot of those teams make those adjustments and either rise or fall in the offseason. Because you see teams that try to, whether maybe they stay the same, and then because of that, everyone else around them is getting better, and they drop down. You have teams at the top that try to improve, and then you see them improve. You have teams at the top maybe lose some guys, and then they drop down. So yeah, just like every year, the offseason is very important in order to take advantage of what it is that you have and what it is that you can try to do that next season. And both these teams use that to their advantage, and obviously came from different paths. Chiefs almost in the Super Bowl last year, the Niners second pick, and now they're both here in Miami playing for a shot at history. So, which is interesting to see how both these teams got there over the last few seasons. And obviously on the next episode we'll talk about exactly how they match up, who I think is going to win. But regardless, I think this is probably one of the better outcomes in terms of when the playoffs started, of teams we wanted to have match up against each other, because it's just like strength on strength. Two coaches trying to get the monkeys off their backs, two quarterbacks trying to stamp their place in the league. A lot of great storylines, a lot of great characters involved in the game. So, like I said, at the very least, there should be more than the win team should have more than 13 points. I think. I mean, obviously, I didn't think the Patriots only going to score 13 points last season. I believe, yeah, it was 13-3. I want to make sure I'm not making all these jokes and I was incorrect about that. But yeah, regardless, I think there should be more points. There should be more scoring. It should be more entertaining. Yeah, it's 13-3. I knew I wasn't bugging. But yeah, it should be more entertaining. It should be a very good game, and I know I'm looking forward to it, and I believe all you guys should be looking forward to it too. It's like I said, two of the maybe not the best teams, because I mean the Ravens from the AFC side, but just two of the best teams throughout the season are meeting in the biggest game of the season. That's all really you kind of hope for. That's all you can really ask for, and it should be a fun one. So, so after this break, there was some other news around the NFL that went on during Super Bowl, really didn't have to do with the Super Bowl, and we were talking about some of that news and what that was, and how I think that could impact this offseason and potentially next offseason. I mean, this offseason and potentially next season, right after this break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
On the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, if you weren't paying attention, which, I mean, you should be because football, but if you weren't paying attention, Jay Glazer, who said some things on radio, said some things to Fox Sports that were pretty interesting. And, I mean, Jay Glazer is a guy who's maybe not a reporter, but he's on top of a lot of things, and he's usually... When he says things, they're usually right. Like he just doesn't say things just to say them to try to just throw them out there like his own speculation. Like when he says things, it's usually because he has sources to back them up. And one of the things that he was stating is the fact that he believes that he believes the Chargers may very well be moving on from Phillip Rivers. And that part of it is that is interesting. I know we talked about last on one of the podcasts last week about how I thought there could be a lot of potential quarterback movement this offseason, and I didn't think we were going to get it in February, but it seems to, I mean, he didn't necessarily say that they're definitely passing on, and obviously they have a month to make the decision, but once we saw that Phillip Rivers was moving his family down to Florida to be closer to his extended family, and obviously different Chargers players said different things about not liking to play in LA because like the fan base isn't there. You come to the stadium, you have to use silent count because there's more away fans than home fans. Different things that people haven't liked about the Chargers since they moved from San Diego to LA. And Phillip Rivers has been vocal about some of those things. And obviously he didn't play that well last year, so there's definitely a chance and a belief that they could move on from him, and maybe he moves on from them, vice versa, what have you. But I thought that was interesting just because, I mean, he's been their guy for 16 years? I think, he's been in the league 16 years, I believe. Only ever played with the Chargers, has had success there. I think, they played in the AFC Championship game, and I believe he played that game with a torn ACL, which is kind of crazy. But it's been in the league since 2004, the same as Eli, who just retired. So, and that was really the first quarterback moving, but Eli's retirement was the first stepping stone, and obviously he's, like I said, and the Big Ben's also in that class, and he's a guy who's coming off of a serious elbow injury that kept him out all season, so we'll see what shape he's in and what decision he decides to make. But Phillip Rivers, if they decide to move on, I mean, that's a big deal. Because it's like, all right, if you're Phillip Rivers, what do you want to do? Like, do you just want to play another season just to play? Do you want to play another season to prove that last year was a fluke? Because obviously he had a lot of his turnover issues last year. And you could argue that had he played better, the Chargers might have had a shot to get into the playoffs. I think they won 5-11 or something this year, and at least in quite a few of those losses ended on the final drive. I can think of, the Raiders game, the Chiefs game, just off the top of my head, basically ended with Phillip throwing interceptions. And I don't think those were only games. I'm pretty sure there were others. But even throughout that, I mean, if it weren't for Jameis Winston, we would have been talking more about how much Phillip Rivers was turning the ball over last year. So if the Chargers decide to move on, I understand just because of the aspect of he's getting older, maybe time for a new era, he hasn't really played that well, all that fun stuff. Well, he didn't play that well this past season. But then I'm saying, if you're Phillip Rivers, all right, you already moved your family down to Florida to be close, because he's from Alabama, I believe, so be close to your family there. And was that a preemptive move because you know teams in Florida may need a quarterback? Maybe not the Jaguars because they already have Nick Foles on the book, and that'd be hard to get the contract off. And then they had Minshew, but maybe does he want to play for a guy like Bruce Arians, who didn't exactly give James Winston the most ringing endorsement after season, due to the fact of his all his turnovers. I believe his son to the sense like if we can win, because they won a good amount of games with him starting and obviously throwing 30 picks. So he said if we can win with that, we can win with a lot of people, something to that extent. So it was like, do you want to play there? I mean, obviously Miami, if they're in on Tua or like Justin Herbert or somebody, do they want them to start right away? Do they want to bring Fitzmagic back? Do they want to maybe get a Phillip Rivers to like provide them a year stopgap, give them somebody these quarterbacks can learn from, a mentor, if you will. I mean, obviously we'll see how she's, because I know Eli was very vocal on not liking that mentorship role because he fastened himself as a starting quarterback. So as a starter, you think you're the best, you want to be the best. So getting benched potentially or having to mentor young guys, maybe not on Phillip's agenda. So that'd be interesting to see. And then also from the flip side, for the Chargers thing, if this is true, and we'll see. Obviously, we have a little while until free agency starts back up, so we'll see if this is actually true. And I mean, for all we know, Phillip Rivers may just retire, so it wouldn't even be the Chargers' decision to make. Because Phillip Rivers would just make it. But if he retires or they let him go, then obviously they need a quarterback. I mean, I think I know they pick in the top 10, but it's not like they pick high. Yeah, they pick, what is it? They pick 6. So, you're sitting behind teams. So, you're sitting behind the Bengals, obviously. Sitting behind the Dolphins, who both may want quarterbacks. You're sitting behind 2 spots in the Lions and the Giants, who could potentially be trading back from their pick in order to get more picks, because they don't need a quarterback, and obviously I don't think anybody's going to trade back. I don't think Washington's going to trade back from 2 because you're not going to give up on the chance to draft Chase Young, in my opinion. And to say the same way the Niners didn't give up the chance to draft Nick Bosa. When you have a great defensive player who could drastically improve your defense if he's on your team, you don't just pass that up, in my opinion. But we'll see. But yeah, so you have 2 slots ahead of the Dolphins that may very well be trade-up options, whether it's the Panthers behind them at 7, whether it's maybe like a team like the Raiders or the Colts, or even like the Bucks, who may want to trade up in order to get a shot at their quarterback. They may not have to, but it's like, can San Diego risk that? LA risk that and be behind potentially 3 teams that may need a quarterback, and not including yourself, who may need a quarterback at 6. So yeah, just like if they decide to move on, which again, that was Jay Glazer's impression from the information he got, was that they are going to move on. Obviously, nothing's final yet. We don't know for certain, and they may change their mind. Phillip may change his mind. Like I said, him moving his family down to Florida was my first inkling that, hey, maybe he's moved on from them, they moved on for him, whatever the situation may be. But I thought that was interesting to see. We already got some news in that regard, and the free agency, and the season's not even over yet. The season technically still going on. There's still a Super Bowl to play, so we're getting this kind of information before the season even starts is interesting. And so yeah, we'll see what happens with the Chargers, happens with Phillip Rivers, and then also there was some news out there that while obviously the Saints want Drew Brees back, you're going to want Drew Brees back. You're not going to push him out if he wants to stay. But it was interesting that I read somewhere that Glazer said, I think this was on The Herd, he said this about Taysom Hill, that they believe he can be a franchise quarterback, which is funny to me because, again, Taysom Hill hasn't played quarterback in, I think, about 6 years, whenever he finished up during his time at BYU. He's going to turn 30 in this coming August. Obviously, that's in 7 months, but he's going to be 30. Having never started as a quarterback, he's thrown. What has he thrown? He's thrown. Let's see, they don't even list his passing. I'm trying to find, but I think he's thrown like 13 passes or something like that in his career. So it's not even like it's not like he's showcased a lot of speed. So he's only thrown passes in the last 2 seasons, and he's thrown 13 combined passes, 3 of 7 and 3 of 6 in his career, and he threw 1 interception last year. And obviously, most of those are just like gadget type plays. It's not like he was Teddy Bridgewater, where he started as a quarterback and was like going through reads, going through drops, all that fun stuff. He's like doing gimmicky type of stuff. Obviously, he still has to make the throws, and that one throw he made in the Viking game was quite impressive. But again, that's only one throw. We've seen receivers like Odell or different guys make those throws on like the quarterback, or Mohamed Sanu, who might honestly be the best non-quarterback thrower in the league. But yeah, so we've seen that from other players. So that was an interesting report to me, just because it's like, would Sean Payton, a guy who obviously fastens himself as an offensive guru, offensive genius, and he's had top offenses basically his entire time with the Saints, and always kind of, at least always to me, kind of came off as a guy who believes he's the smartest guy in the room, tries to think 3 steps ahead of everybody else. Would he really rest the future of the franchise on a guy who hasn't played quarterback in years? Like, it's one thing if they were going to move on to Teddy Bridgewater. I'm like, all right, I get it. He was 5-0 as a starter this year, has shown flashes of being at least an above-average starting quarterback in the league. So they want to move on from him if Drew Brees decides not to come back. All right, that's fine. But to be just like, yeah, I'm all in on Taysom Hill, I mean, that could make or break the rest of his tenure with the Saints, honestly. And I mean, obviously, he knows more than me. He watches practice. He watches the film. He knows what he sees out there. And obviously, they utilize him to throw the ball enough. I mean, 6 times isn't really that much, but as a person that doesn't really play quarterback, it's a good amount. And obviously, he's shown his ability as a runner and stuff, so he can do things that Drew Brees obviously can't back there at the position. So that adds another dynamic to that offense. But the fact that the report came out that they view him as a franchise quarterback was very interesting to me, as was just because it seems like Drew Brees is at least considering retirement. Obviously, he hasn't made a decision yet, but I thought it was interesting how I know Russell Wilson was supposed to start in the Pro Bowl for the NFC side, and he decided to give it to Drew Brees, and that's kind of the thing that, I believe, who was it? I think Derek Jeter, or somebody, his last All-Star game, they let him start. If I'm remembering correctly. I don't remember exactly, but if I remember correctly, I believe they let him start at shortstop, even though obviously at that point he wasn't the best shortstop in the league. Just because they knew it was his last one. I mean, Kobe was voted in as a starter in his last All-Star game, but the process is a little bit different. But yeah, so just the fact that Russell Wilson gave up his starting spot to Drew Brees may be a sign of conversation he had with him, like, hey, this might be my last one. Can I have this? Or maybe Russell Wilson thinks, realizing, hey, this may be his last one, let him have this kind of thing. Because that's not just something normally you do for a guy that you think is going to be back, especially as a guy that played as well as he did throughout this year. You think he could very well be at the Pro Bowl next year, because, again, people come in and out. A lot of fan voting is involved, so it wouldn't be that hard for Drew Brees to get back to a Pro Bowl this next season, unless he's potentially not coming back. So that part of it was interesting to me. And just, I know I talked about the Saints being a part of the quarterback movement, carousel, whatever you want to call it, that's going to go on in this offseason, but I did not think it was going to be them starting Taysom Hill at quarterback next season. That is not, that had never once crossed my mind, and maybe it should have, but that's not something I thought about. I thought it could maybe be Teddy Bridgewater, maybe they drafted a guy, something. I never once contemplated Taysom Hill being the starting quarterback for the Saints next season. But it at least sounds like it's a possibility. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And obviously, this is all a moot point if Drew Brees decides he wants to come back for another year, because if he wants to come back, he's not playing anywhere else. It's not happening. Like I said, if he contemplates retiring and just like, hey, look, I'm done, because you don't want to, you're at that level, you don't necessarily want to go out too late where you're like getting benched or like you're not playing up to the standard that you want to play. That's not what I imagine most professional athletes at that level want to be, especially guys that are going to go into the Hall of Fame. They want to be remembered as great players. So if you're not that anymore, you don't feel like that anymore, maybe it's time to hang it up. And it'd be interesting to see if he decides that, and then Obviously, if he does decide that, then the Saints have a decision on their hands. And yeah, it'd be interesting just to follow what the decision is. And if it is, in fact, Taysom Hill, that could be a starting quarterback for New Orleans Saints when the season opens next season. Something I did not think I would be talking about or even saying out loud in a sentence. Not even this time yesterday, but just this time ever. Like, just at any point, I never did the thought of Taysom Hill being a starting quarterback and really crossed my mind. But hey, it's possible. Anything is possible. So after this last break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the MLB. And they are talking about some rule changes that I believe should have been implemented a long time ago. But they're deciding to finally come around on it. And it seems like it very well could happen. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will inform you of what it is after this break. And I'll also give my opinion on it. So, be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, if you didn't know what I was referring to, per reports from Jeff Passan of ESPN and Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, the MLB on January 14th tendered a proposal to the union for several rule changes, and the union responded with its own proposal on Friday. But one of the most polarizing rule changes on the bus was the universal designated hitter. Because as you know, if you're a fellow red baseball, even if you're not, you probably still know this. DH has been around in the American League since, what was it? I think it was like the 70s. Yeah, it took effect in 73. On the AL, and then obviously never came over to the NL. And it's been talked about on if they should make it way over to the NL, if it will ever make its way over to the NL. And I was always a fan of yes, and I'll explain why in a moment. But it seems like it's a very real possibility it could happen. I think I saw reports maybe 2021. I don't think this year seems like it'd be too soon, but you never know. But yeah, 2021 seemed like a possibility for when this could take effect, and I think it's a great idea, honestly. I mean, baseball was always one of those weird sports to me because it's the only sport really I could think of. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but like, no other sport has like different rules for the different leagues or different conferences, whatever you want to call it. Like NFL, all the rules are the same for both conferences. NBA, all the rules are the same for both conferences. NHL, I'm pretty sure all the rules are the same for both conferences. The MLB was the only one that's like, hey, we're going to have this special thing in one league but not have it in the other. So then you either, when these teams cross paths, you make them meet in the World Series, and there's like advantages and disadvantages for both sides. Now AL pitchers have to hit, which may hurt those AL teams, and NL players have to add a DH, which maybe could benefit that team, because then you have a situation where, like the Nationals this past year, they can play Howie Kendrick, play Howie Kendrick in the DH spot and use his bat, and not have him in the field, and they can have Asdrubal Cabrera, I believe, is who they had start in his place, just because he's a better fielder, so that gives them an advantage. But then obviously when you go over to the NL side, then obviously you have pitchers have to hit, and obviously there are some pitchers that take their craft very seriously and they like hitting. Whether it's Bumgarner, I know Max Scherzer's a competitor. He likes to hit. Zach Greinke likes to hit. The Mets pitchers, Syndergaard, DeGrom, they like to hit. So there's many pitchers around the league that take pride in hitting. But there's also many of them that, I don't say don't take pride, but just don't work on it as much because they don't really have to. Like, you really don't have to work on it if you're in the NL. And even going tracing back to, like, the lower levels of the sport, back in high school, obviously your best players play in a lot of teams' best players are their pitchers, so you're not just going to leave their bat out of the lineup. But I know when I played in high school, there was most of our pitchers didn't hit. We only really had one who's now in the farm system for the Astros. Shout out B-Lac. But yeah, he was the only pitcher on our team that hit. Every other pitcher got like DH for. So just something going even down to then past like the little league, middle school stage. Most pitchers, if they're focusing just on pitching, they don't play any other position. I mean, all these guys do, but once you get up to that elite level, like in varsity, you're potentially either getting drafted or going to college to play baseball, whatever. You're focusing on one thing, and most of them focus on pitching. So unless you're just an absolute monster of a hitter, they just don't work on it because that's not a requirement for you. So then you're going years and years and years just not really having to work on it. Whether then you go to college, you don't got to hit. If you get drafted by AL team, you don't have to hit. So it's just like these guys are not having to work on this craft for long periods of time, and then now you get to the league, and then now if you're on an NL team, you have a pitcher up there and he has to hit. It's just like, I mean, and they're not the only ones. There's obviously top of the lineup, bottom of the lineup. There's not every hitter hits 300 throughout every team's lineup. So you have guys that are easier outs than others, but in a lot of circumstances, the pitchers are almost to a degree an automatic out. I believe this past season they hit like around 100 on the year with like very little slugging percentage, very little on base percentage. So it's like, just like with pitchers now becoming worse at hitting than they've ever been, now seems like a good time to just be like, all right, let's just not have them work on it. And then it's even the scenario where, like, if they are good at it, like the guy like Ohtani, who played two positions before he came to the MLB, and then obviously he's still trying to do that here. Or I thought the Rays had a pitching prospect that was also trying to do the pitching outfield kind of thing. Like, okay, if he will still want to be able to hit, you can still use his bat on his off days. Like, he can still hit if he wants. If you don't have another person that's a better alternative for that spot, you can still use that bat if you have a pitcher that's capable of doing that and you want to do that. So it's not like you take pitchers hitting completely out of the game, but just like there's a lot of guys who don't work on hitting and don't need to work on hitting. So it's like, why force them to get up there and then potentially get hurt swinging or get hurt like running the bases? So again, most of these guys don't really work on running the bases that much because they don't really get on base that often. So then now you're talking about like potentially like pulling a muscle or having to slide, hurting their hand, or different things that could happen on the base path that just is not necessary for the pitcher to have to work on. So that's just one reason why I think it'd be cool. Also, I mean, from a baseball perspective, I'm an offensive guy. Obviously, was the steroid era bad in terms of the cheating? Yes. Was it entertaining to watch? Also, yes. I like home runs. I like runs scored. Pitching duels are cool, but at a certain point, I want to see some runs be put across the plate. So having an extra batter in there can help increase the offensive output in these games and also make them more entertaining to watch. Obviously, baseball has been one of the few sports that's kind of declined in ratings over the last since comparative to the other sports, and a lot of that's just because the games are too long, and just because they're not everybody's that interested in the non-offensive aspects of the game. So then having DH, you don't have to worry about pinch hitters as much, you don't have to worry about all that stuff, so that can help speed up the game a little bit. But also, I mean, a lot of issues with people not wanting to add it, and a lot of it's just because baseball fans are purists in that they like the game the way it is, even though the DH was added in. That wasn't a part of the original game. It was added in the 70s, and obviously it's been completely fine. No one's really complained about it, per se. Maybe they complained about it back then, but now everyone's kind of accepted it as cool. So it's like, all we're doing is just adding it to both leagues instead of one, even though I don't understand why Again, I wasn't around back then, but the fact they only added it into one was already weird to me because it's like, well, I have different rules for different leagues. But whatever. But yeah, so a lot of people talking about it just like, oh, it's we like having watched pitchers hit, blah, blah, and I'm like, I don't. I mean, was Bartolo Colon hitting a home run one of the cooler moments to see? Yes. Is it cool to see? I think, was it Archie Bradley that hit a home run in the playoff game or something? But yeah, I know he hit a home run off the Brewers at some point. I think it was in a playoff game. And like, is it cool to see pitchers hit and do cool things? Yes. But do those happen often enough for me to wish for them to keep hitting? No, in my personal opinion. And those provide for cool moments, but there's not enough of them for me, at least, to warrant being like, yeah, let's just keep having pitchers hit game after game. And also another thing that people didn't like was that, oh, we'll take strategy out of the game because now there's no like double switches or like pinch hitters or blah blah. And I'm like, no one's watching the games for the double switches, honestly. Are we watching for the strategy of it? Of course, but it's still strategy involved with the DH. Because it's not like involved with DH. You again. It's not like it's a set DH every game. You can obviously pick and choose who you want in DH. So if you have a guy who's struggling, you could take him out. If you have a guy that matches up better with certain pitchers, you can put him in. That's strategy involved in the game itself. You can still make substitutions at the DH just like you can at any other position. You can have people pinch hit. If you have like, say you have a lefty that's been that's the DH because it was a righty hitter, and they bring in a lefty. Now you can, or they're going to bring in a lefty. Now you can switch. You can switch the DH out. You can pinch hit for him. Now you bring in a righty. There's still strategy involved, and also it allows more flexibility in the lineup. Because normally almost every team outside of the Cubs and Joe Madden, really, all the pitchers hit ninth. You already know that. You know when that spot's coming up, what have you. Every game, you know that, all right, the pitcher's going to be the ninth hitter. Now with the DH, you can move him up and down, move other players up and down the lineup so that not every lineup has to look the same based on whether that's who the DH is, who the position players are that game. There's ability for you to maneuver the lineup on a daily basis, which is not something that normally happens because you normally just have your normal 8 position players and then the pitcher just hits last. Now that last hitter isn't going to hit last, and also just adds another position, or not another job, but it just adds another. It can add another bat to a team. Because it's not like you're taking pitchers out. It's not like pitchers don't exist anymore. They still exist. They still do their job. But now if you have a guy who, for whatever reason, struggles in the field, what have you, but you could use that bat in the lineup more times than not. Now instead of having to put him out there in left field or put him out there at second base, what have you, and then risk, all right, maybe he'll hit like a home run to help counteract the fact that he can't get to a certain ball in the corner or makes a throwing error or fielding error or something like that. So instead of just having to deal with that, you can still have him involved in the lineup every game because there's certain times you can just be like, hey, no, we can't have you play today because you're a liability for us. But it's still something he brings and contributes to the team. So now he can use that. What he does contribute to the team and does well. Now he's able to utilize that, and like I said, just adds an extra. Like I said, not an extra job, but just adds an extra position, a different roster spot in terms of now. I know teams also have to think of like, hey, who's going to be that extra bat for us throughout the season. It's not something that you normally have to think about. You normally just think about your normal non-position players, and you look in the platoon players. Guys are going to pinch hit here and there, but now knowing you need to have a DH every year adds in a different aspect the way teams go about drafting guys, go about free agency, go about trades, knowing that you're going to need that extra bat in there at all times. So, like I said, I'm an offensive guy. Anything to bring more offense into baseball is interesting to me. So, I'm always for that, and it seems like the players in the league are for that. So it's like, why not just do it? And again, I know it may take getting used to for a while, but I think eventually everyone will just get over it. It's really not that serious. Like I said, it's already a part of the game. It's just not part of the entire game, which, as I've mentioned a couple times, has always struck me as weird. I never understood that at all. I was like, how do you just be like, hey, in one league we do this, in another league we do that, even though we're playing the same exact sport? I was like, that's just kind of weird. But whatever. But yeah, so then I think that would just be cool to see, and it may very well happen sooner rather than later. So that'll do it for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I want to thank you guys for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you could, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of the latest stuff that we drop. If you could please give us a 5-star rating and a very nice review. Very appreciated. Very helpful. Help see what you like, as I said earlier. Help us see what you guys like, don't like. See ways that we can improve. If you're on social media, we're also on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. Whatever you want to do, we can do. So, like I said, thank you. That is my time. I have been Chris Blades, and until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.